you're on delay. So
yeah, the Facebook's like 10 seconds behind. It makes it a little difficult to interact with people there, but it's better than nothing, I guess. So it says its webinar is now streaming live on Facebook. And then if I hit refresh on your page, I should be able to see us.
Oh shoot, I have Kill My Feed on right now. So
yeah, you'll still. All right, so we are live on Facebook.
Wait, I should just stay. Wait, should I stay in Facebook or I should stay in?
So I split my screen so I can see both. But if your screen's not large enough or it's too confusing, you can just stay on Zoom because that will be real time for us.
Okay. All right. So we're live. So we better get started, right? So it's Erica, and thank you for joining us today. If you can see and hear us.
So we're live on Facebook.
Wait, I should just stay. Wait.
Start. Okay. Sorry about that.
All right, that's okay. I'm glad it was you and not me. Anyhow, we have with us today Dr. Buddy Touchinsky. And Buddy and I met at a clinical mentorship mastermind, and we have been collaborating on lots of projects ever since. And so I'm excited to have you here today. And we will be talking about balancing blood sugar. So Buddy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you help your patients with and how you kind of got to where where you are today.
Sure. So like you, I started my career as a chiropractor, and that was my major focus for a couple of years in the beginning. And well, to go back a little further, I played ball in college. I hurt my back really bad, and actually hurt my back bad back in high school. So I've had back issues for a lot of years, and that's what got me into chiropractic. And so I was kind of always just kind of in the mindset, I just want to help like sports injuries, work injuries, stuff like that. And then I get out of school and I start practicing, and like 9 out of 10 people that walked in, they walked in for neck or back pain, but they also had GERD, heartburn, they had IBS, they had chronic fatigue syndrome, they had all these other health issues. And like you, going back to chiropractic college, we get a pretty good background in a lot of that stuff, and in physiology, anatomy, biochemistry, and I knew that there were lots of things that I could do for these people in addition to the physical, like muscle and joint stuff that we would do in our office, physical medicine stuff that we do in the office, traditional chiropractic treatments. So it got to the point where there was really no one else around in my area that really focused on that stuff. So it's like, okay, I gotta start working on this stuff. And so I in the beginning, I dabbled a little here or there. I ran some programs, some diet and lifestyle changes, and pretty quickly we started seeing some decent results. So I just got to the point, I'd say about 6-8 years ago now, that I just decided to jump right in and really get serious about the diet, lifestyle, functional medicine stuff. And I really enjoy that. I still enjoy chiropractic. I still do that 2 days a week, but then the other 3 days a week, I focus most of my efforts on the functional medicine and the diet and lifestyle programs.
Great. So you get like the best of both worlds too. That's kind of how I roll here in my practice as well. But so if you're not diabetic, or, you know, what you just spoke of, what does that have to do with balancing blood sugars, and why should like our viewers care about, you know, what you're talking about today?
Sure. Yeah, great question. And I often tell people, like my health coach, Jess, and I collaborate a lot, and we talk about different programs and different things that we do. And we were kind of just sitting around one day talking, and so I said, like, there's one thing that I could do with every single patient. Let's say the licensing board came to me, or the healthcare king came to me and said, you get to choose one thing, one intervention that you do with people. What would that be? And the answer I came up with was, I think it'd be balancing blood sugars, because that really like plays into a lot of different issues, a lot of different health issues. And I know we can get into more in a second in that, but balancing improperly balanced blood sugar. So lots of blood sugar fluctuations, elevated blood sugar issues, leading to then something called insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome, is responsible for probably 80% of the people that walk in their family doctor's office on a day-to-day visit.
With what are they complaining of, and what kind of symptoms, or what kind of diagnosis? You know, are they given the diagnosis of metabolic syndrome? And so what?
Yeah, often not, indirectly. I don't know if family docs are using that term yet these days. They are with each other, and it's something that's common in the literature. But for the most part, we're talking about, just to keep it simple, so that's your high blood pressure cases, that's your diabetes, your pre-diabetes, high cholesterol, it's obesity, it's weight gain, it's centralized obesity, gain and weight around the midsection, which then just those issues alone can then lead to low testosterone, for instance, in males. It can lead to, all sorts of issues. It can lead to just poor diets in general, because once you're insulin resistant, then you start to have cravings. You start to have sugar cravings all the time to help with that. And then you just get on this roller coaster long term where you eat something sweet or starchy or carby, and then you spike your blood sugar, and then you have a crash, and then you're craving something an hour or two later, and then rinse and repeat that for 5, 10, 15 years. And that's a recipe for blood sugar regulation issues, and then it's kind of downhill from there.
Right. So lots of hormonal issues, lots of weight gain issues that comes along with insulin resistance. Because I think for our viewers, maybe you want to kind of let them know what you're talking about in terms of insulin resistance. Because I know people know what high and low blood sugars are, but I don't think everyone knows what insulin resistance is.
Yeah. So I was trying to think of this most of the day, like what's a good analogy? And I've kind of toyed around with this analogy in the past. So let me see if I can finally make it work for the Facebook Live viewers here. So I kind of look at our body as a vehicle, so like an automobile. And let's say that the normal amounts of blood sugar that we need and that we burn on a daily basis, that's the regular fuel tank of the automobile. And then we'll call something that like reserve tanks. So if you can imagine these reserve tanks, they would have to be strapped to the outside of the vehicle. So picture that in your head for a second. So when things are working correctly, so when things are going as planned, we will fill and take from the regular fuel tank throughout the day as needed. And we never totally empty the tank, and we never totally fill it up and then overfill it. But what happens is, the car runs nicely. And the car runs nicely, and it doesn't have anything extra on it and all this other bulky stuff that we'll talk about in a second. So it'd be like filling up your gas in the morning on the way to work. And then you drive an hour to work, and then you drive an hour home. And let's say you're down to a half a tank. And then you get up the next morning, okay, you got a half tank. On your way to work again, you fill it up. And then you basically fill up and use that same half a tank every single day. So that's like getting up in the morning and eating breakfast. And then let's say you're physical all day, either a physical job, or let's say you go to work, you sit at a desk. All right, your tank's still full, but you have a light lunch, and then you go for a walk after lunch. So at lunch, you fill it up a little more, but then that walk after lunch, you start to empty from that fuel tank. And then you get to after work, maybe on the way home, you stop at the gym, you work out for a half hour, 45 minutes. You drain that fuel tank down even more to half a tank, just like our car analogy. And then you have dinner, you fill it up, you go to bed that night, you wake up the next morning, maybe you go for a walk, you do a workout in the morning, you use up some more of that fuel, but then you fill it up again with the next meal. So there should be a balance between energy coming in and energy going out. The problem happens when, all right, let's go back to the car analogy. You drive to work and back, and on the way back, a half mile from home, you fill up the car, you fill up the fuel tank, park it in the garage overnight, you get up the next morning, then you get a half mile away, you fill it up even more, and you put a half tank in, but now you only have a little bit of room there because you just filled it up the night before. So now now you're out of room. So now we got to start adding these exterior fuel tanks, so these reserve tanks. And now you got to start filling them up when you run out of room in the regular tank. I mean, it seems foolish, but this is what I'm getting at. It's kind of what we do to our bodies. So then you drive to work, and say you get halfway to work and you stop and you fill up again. So now you got to add more of these reserve tanks to the outside of the car. So you're like this old ratchety car that's got a full fuel tank, the regular one, plus all of these exterior fuel tanks like buckled on and taped to the outside.
Weighing it down, right.
Weighing it down and
totally unnecessary, right.
Totally unnecessary. But worse yet, when you do that enough, now you pull up to the gas station, and the gas station attendant, let's say it's full serve like back in the old days, or no, you're in Jersey, so this is perfect.
Yeah.
So you got the gas station attendant there, and he knows, he's like, okay, this woman, she's always got a full tank, so I'm just going to start adding tanks to the outside of the car. So now let's flip back to the human version of this analogy. So that's kind of what happens with insulin resistance. So now that's what happens with weight gain. So if you get up in the morning, you eat a big breakfast, say pancakes, cereal, whatever, you're filling up the fuel tank. Then you get to work, you haven't had any activity, you do a desk job, it's break time, 9:30, you have a snack, a Snickers bar and a Coke. More calories, more fuel, you haven't burned any off yet. So now you got to start, it's already full, you got to start adding on to the reserves, which in the case of the human body, it's fat reserves. And then same thing, you get the lunch, you have a slice of pizza, a couple slices of pizza, more fuel. All right, you got to pack that on, it reserves, in the fat reserves. And then same thing for dinners. Let's say you don't stop at the gym on the way home. You go right home, you plop down, watch TV, and then you have your dinner, big plate of pasta or whatever, more fuel, more calories. Again, nowhere for it to go. It has to go into reserves, which are your fat reserves. And just like that gas station attendant that knows or just assumes that everything's already full, you need to add it to reserves, our body will do the same thing as well. So now the insulin receptors, where the insulin, and it gets a little far into the weeds, but insulin basically tells our body to store energy. And when we have a meal, insulin's released and says, get into the cells. So get into the regular part of the cell, so the regular fuel tank, as well as reserves. But after a while, when you keep triggering that system over and over again, and you're always filled up on the reserves, eventually the insulin receptors, like that gas station attendant, just say, you know what, we're always full all the time, just go right into reserves.
Right,
and
right.
Then if you do that even longer, even they stop working. So now our blood sugar starts going up and up and up, even between meals. And that's basically what prediabetes and then eventually diabetes is.
Right, right. It starts affecting the pancreas, and the pancreas isn't releasing insulin well. And then your blood sugar stays high, your fat reserves are maxed out, and you're in big trouble. So how do you go about then? Because everyone knows that, right? In terms of, you know, what we should eat in the morning, we probably should be snacking on Snickers bars and a soda or whatever. So how can we help decrease insulin resistance, and how can we better manage our blood sugar? And something obviously you're going to be telling our viewers, something like we don't already know, right? So give us a little bit of insight in terms of how do we help better manage that?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, you say we should know this, I think, but I don't think a lot of people do, and it's just because we're not really educated on it, and it just becomes, it's part of our culture or part of growing up that, okay, we have cereal for breakfast, we have bagels, we have muffins, English muffins, we have pancakes, we have waffles. So it's a lot of carbs, a lot of sugar, and then same thing for all of our other meals. So a snack, we have, most of it's carby and starchy. Same thing for we get the lunch. We have a sandwich, we have a sub, we have pizza, dinner, we have pasta. So I think where people get tripped up is that it's not sugar. So people aren't seeing it as, oh, I'm eating a lot of sugar, so I don't see why it affects my blood sugar. But if you think about it, if you look at what it's doing, is you can eat one slice of bread. I don't care if it's white or whole grain, it's going to have a similar effect on the blood sugar. One slice of bread is probably the equivalent of eating like 3 to 4 teaspoons of sugar, because within a half hour, that's what your body's going to do to it anyway. Your blood glucose, your blood sugar is going to go up the equivalent by eating that bread, just as much as 2 or 3 teaspoons of sugar. A can of Coke, if someone says, oh, I only have 1 can of Coke a day, well, let's flip that and say, oh, I only have 8 to 10 teaspoons of sugar a day in one drink, because that's what a Coke or a Pepsi, I mean, that's what you're getting is 8 to 10 teaspoons of sugar.
Well, and besides what it's not only doing to your blood sugar, how that's, you know, creating this vicious cycle of cravings, what the bread, the gluten in the bread might be doing to your gut, your brain, causing inflammation. So it is more than just blood sugar. And I know that's why you wanted to talk about blood sugar today, because it's not just balancing your blood sugar, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, who has trouble sleeping? Like for those watching right now, you have trouble sleeping at night, you wake up in the middle of the night, type in, I do, or hit the angry button or whatever that icon is there at the bottom of the.
I can only see my Zoom chat, so I can't see anything on Facebook.
I'll keep an eye on that. But I mean, a lot of people have trouble sleeping. So that could be blood sugar issues, because what happens when you eat, and I'll use this example. I wore a continuous blood glucose monitor for 2 weeks. and you wear it on the underside of your arm, and then you scan it and it gives you the readout. So it gives you like a continuous graph of what your blood sugar looks like on a given day. If I'm eating well, so if I get up and I have like a veggie omelet for breakfast, and let's say I have like a chicken salad for lunch, and let's say I have steak and broccoli for dinner, my blood sugar line, you get like little blips. It's very even straight across. And then overnight, you get like a downward trend all the way down until you wake up. And then when you wake up, your stress hormones kick in and it bumps up your blood sugar a little bit because it takes them out of reserves. On a day where I'm eating poorly, because I did both to test it, on a day where I got up and I ate pancakes for breakfast, and then at lunch, I might have had a sandwich or pizza or something like that, and dinner, I don't even remember. But all day long, my blood sugar is bouncing up and down. And every time it goes down, that's when you're going to crave food. So you're going to crave a snack, and you're going to eat something, and you're going to push it up again. But not only that, my blood sugar levels continued even without eating meals. Like it went up a little at night, and then it went down, and then it went up, and then it went down. But it went down way more than just like a regular night where I didn't really eat before bed. Dinner was my last meal, and it went down nice and level. On the days where I ate poorly, those nights, my blood sugar bounced around. So it disrupted my sleep. And then not only that, but every time it goes down, it's triggering your stress hormone, which is disrupting sleep. So now you're asking your adrenals to kick in and release cortisol, which uses up resources for other hormones and neurotransmitters. It uses up adrenal function. So for those of you that are kind of borderline burnt out anyway on a regular basis, now you're going to stress those adrenals even more by having your blood sugar bounce up and down and stressing those adrenals. So that you can cause issues with that, and that leads to adrenal fatigue or poor adrenal function. So yeah, it's more than just leading to diabetes, or it's more than just about obesity and weight gain. And then, oh, by the way, when you screw with your adrenals like that, then you can cause inflammation and affect the way your body balances inflammation. And that could lead to all sorts of issues, whether it's joint pain, muscle pain, I mean, all sorts of problems.
Right. Well, and when you're talking about adrenals, right? So we're talking about the release of the hormone cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and blood sugar balancing and that insulin resistance. If you can look at somebody that you're working through one of your programs, a patient, whatever, and you can kind of tell by their body type also where they're storing their fat and where they kind of need to focus their attention, right? Does that make sense? Yeah.
So most people have blood sugar issues. I mean, unless you're really working on it and following a good program. But the typical body type for that insulin resistance is kind of like the more of the just no waste. So the barrel type shape, the excess body fat around the abdomen, because you start to pack a lot of pounds around the abdomen, which is a problem because that's where it's around the organs. So you start to put a lot of pressure on a lot of the organs, which could lead like around the kidneys, which could lead to high blood pressure. It's readily available to enter back into the bloodstream. So that's what causes the cholesterol to go up, because your body, your blood constantly has to shuttle around these fats that are entering the bloodstream pretty readily from the abdominal type of fat and the fat around the viscera or the organs. That's opposed to maybe more weight around the hips, which is more of an estrogen excess, or more of a hormonal distribution, where that fat is, it's stubborn fat. It's hard to burn because it's between the muscle and then the skin. So it's almost like exterior on the outer layer of the body. And so women will often complain about that, but it's actually the less dangerous type of fat to have. The good news is, even though it's worse around the midsection, because it is able to readily enter the bloodstream, it's a whole lot easier to get rid of. And that's why we see these body types when they go on our programs. And I know, Erica, you offer this program as well, the Metabolic Reset program. People will drop like 20, 30, 40 pounds in just 6 weeks, because it's there to release pretty easily. And once you balance the blood sugars, that's when it really starts to come off pretty quickly.
Right. And you can see too, by either before and after photos, by measurements. If you're taking measurements around the hips, the abdomen, we take measurements all around different body parts, and you could see the dramatic changes in such a short period of time. And I know, if you've had people go to the doctor, for one, if you go to the doctor, what are they going to do? And if you've had people run through your program and they go to the doctor, they're actually seeing changes in their blood work without medication. Because honestly, if you had somebody, I'm sure you've had several patients go to their primary care doctor, what are they going to do for the things that you're describing?
Yeah, it's tough. And I know a few family practitioners, and it's through no fault of their own or them being a poor doctor. I've one that she minored in nutrition, and she said, look, buddy, I would love to work with people on their diet and get their nutrition down, but I just don't have the time. And that situation's exacerbated now because they had so many months there during quarantine where they weren't seeing nearly as many patients. I mean, talking about like less than probably 20-30% of what they would normally see. So now they're playing catch up. So now they got to see so many people per hour. And so now they've had less time to deal with that stuff. So the only tools they have that can work quickly for them is to get the script pad out and write a prescription for that. Also, in fairness to them, just not a lot of people are interested in it. They'd rather just take that pill for hypertension than to put in the work for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or beyond to make those long-term sustainable changes in order to see the changes in their body type and the changes in their blood work results. And probably some of the doctors don't even know because it's not something that they're taught. And that's what I tell my patients. And I see there's a few of them watching your feed here and commenting. But I tell Pat's on here. Patrick he's a rock star of ours. He lost, what are you at, Pat? Like 50 or 60 pounds since Memorial Day. Got off all of his medications for diabetes within the first week of being on the program because it's that simple sometimes and that easy to balance those blood sugars. And if for those that are going on the program making changes, of course, you got to work with your doctor, and Pat did. Pat was in touch with his doctor every other day, watching his blood sugar levels and tapering down those medications. But yeah, you can get people off those medications. But I tell Pat, I'm like, we're going to teach your doctor something because I bet a lot don't understand or don't realize that once you start making these small tweaks, you can make big changes. And that's what I love about our program. Pat just put 63 pounds lost since Memorial Day.
Oh, that's awesome.
I hope Pat doesn't get mad at me, but I always say this. Pat's like, I'm up in coal cracker country, and my grandfather was a coal miner, and Pat wasn't a coal miner or anything, but we kind of have a type up here where it's like you got your beer and your browts, and then your boilo, which is kind of our holiday drink. And Pat, he had a beer belly, and he had rosy puppy cheeks because he had all these problems. And but God bless him. I mean, he jumped in. And he finally did it. And he's just a model patient of ours. And he's done a great job and got off this medication.
Way to go.
And not only that, he had neuropathy in his feet, which I'm sure the doctor assumed it was from stenosis from his spine or from diabetes. Like that has gone away, and that has pretty much all but gone away. And only after a few weeks as well. So balancing those blood sugars, I don't know. I think it almost seems too easy, or I shouldn't say too easy, too simple, because you could say like, oh, eat this way, eat whole foods and do all this stuff. And people will, yeah. And they'll say like, oh, I know, I tried that and it doesn't work for me or doesn't do whatever. But when you do it and you do it in a structured way so that people aren't screwing up, and people are understanding how to do it, and then they're working through those first couple of days or weeks where it can be a little rough. I mean, that's what I love about this program that you and I both worked on and that we now offer. It's just, it's like clockwork. The first week, it's a little rough. Second week, it's like, oh my God, and it's funny because people actually will message me and say, is it weird for me to feel this? Meaning like they usually say like much better, like I'm sleeping through the night, or like I don't get hungry like every 2 hours, or like I feel like I have less brain fatigue, or I can find my words better. Is that weird? Because now I'm talking, like I talk a lot for my job and I'm not searching for words or kind of stuttering. Is it weird that I'm not doing that anymore, that I'm functioning better? I'm like, no, that's exactly how your body's supposed to work. You're fueling your brain with what it needs. You're not dousing it with excess levels of sugar and then crashing it so you get too little sugar. And right. I mean, I can ramble on about this all night. It's just really awesome the way it works.
Yeah. Well, I was originally asking you if you went to the doctor, what would your doctor do? But honestly, if your blood sugars were within normal range, then they're not even really going to do anything at all. They're waiting for you to be in a disease range so that they can put you on a medication. So, you might have somebody that's on medication, but somebody who's within normal range, but really not in a great functioning range in terms of their blood sugar, in terms of whatever, they're not even really blood pressure, but, the blood sugar is a bigger range, but there's other markers too, right? Liver enzymes, other blood tests that they take on a regular basis, that if you're not in a disease state, thyroid's a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
Then they're not going to do anything. They're not going to do anything at all. And you don't want to wait until you have a disease, or worse, an autoimmune disease that you can't even reverse at that time, that then you have to deal with it when you're in a disease state, So
yes. So you and I use what we call functional ranges. And so you got the lab normal ranges where blood sugar is probably the perfect example. We're talking about blood sugar, so I'll use that. The old standard was like 80 to 120 is considered healthy blood sugar levels. And then they kind of tightened it up a little bit, like 80 to 110. And but if you look at the research, people do their best. And people do their best between like 82 and 89. I mean, this is research studies. And I don't know if you took Brian Walsh's blood chemistry assessment, but he talks about where he gets all of this data. And so he basically went to the scientific research, and looked at multiple studies where they took the outcomes. So what was where was the population of people least likely to die, basically from heart disease, blood pressure issues, stroke, infection, all of the above. And what they found was they come up with a curve. If you get above 89, the curve starts to go up. If you get below 82, I think it was, or 81, the curve starts to go up, meaning more deaths on each side of that. From one end, it's more infections and other things, and the other end, it's more cardiovascular and diabetic type complications. But from 82 to 89, it was the curve was low. So he asked us in class was, well, aren't you guys looking back at your blood work now and hoping that you're between 82 and 89? And well, yeah, because if you go up much more above that, and the interesting thing was, once you got above like 92, it was like all the same risk. So from 82 to like 150, it was pretty much all the same risk. So why wait until you are out of range to that extent? Again, conventional numbers are looking up to 110, you're fine. But once you get over 92, that's signs of like serious issues going on. So that's why you can't always rely on that blood work. Or the other problem we often run across, I'm sure you see this as well, it's so common for people to have crappy blood work that if you're not that bad, the doctors just kind of gloss over it. And it's like, all right, he's pre-diabetic, but he's not diabetic yet. And I got all these patients that are actually diabetic. So eat a low-fat diet and exercise a little bit, and that's okay. See you next time. And they'll let it go for years until you are actually diabetic to jump in and do something about it. And then it becomes a little bit more difficult to address.
Well, and also when it comes to the blood work, that's just one snapshot. I mean, you just said you had the continuous blood glucose monitor on, and based on what you ate, based on your stress levels, you're seeing these spikes and dips throughout the day. And when you're doing, your blood work or your fasting blood work, that's just one snapshot. And,
yeah,
there's a lot more to that story, I feel. So
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because with the continuous blood glucose monitor, here's one thing that if any like people watching, if there's one thing I get out of this, the one aha moment or my kind of mind-blowing type of moment was stress affected my blood sugar more than my foods did.
Yeah.
Maybe aside from the pancakes and syrup, because I was testing things out, my blood sugars ran around 85 most of the time, baseline. When I had the pancake and syrup, it might have went up to like a like 140 or 150. At the same time, well, most of my meals only went like 120. But at the same time, getting up in the morning, if I skip breakfast, which I normally do most days when I work, I don't eat anything. Just the act of getting in my car, driving to work and starting my work day for about 30 minutes, my blood sugar would go up to about 140.
Wow.
So the equivalent of a meal, or maybe even a little bit more. And then when I went and did a workout, so I fasted one day. I didn't eat any breakfast. I didn't eat any lunch. And it was about 2 p.m. I went and did a workout. My blood sugar actually went up to like 170 while I was doing that. Now that's normal function because it's getting sugar into my body for my muscles to burn. But what it showed me was like food is just a minor component of that. Stress actually affected my blood sugar as much as anything else. And the aha moment is if you're stressed the hell out all day long and your blood sugar is high and you say you're eating okay, you might be eating okay and you might be eating the right foods, but your blood sugar is still high. And your doctor's saying like, no, you need to eat less sugar. And you're thinking like, I am eating less. I'm eating salads. I'm eating like a rabbit. But if you're stressed out to the max day in and day out, well, that's going to affect your blood sugars every bit as much, if not more, as those meals. So yeah, stress is a major component as well.
Right. So, I discuss this a lot with my my patients and my clients, and we run through the program. And, you know, it's an important part, you know, of success and long-term sustainable, you know, results. And so do you focus on that with your group reset clients?
So
managing stress, managing
yeah, we try to include all of that stuff, like proper sleep habits, getting out in nature every day and just spending some quiet time or going for a walk, getting in some activity. And so for people who aren't familiar with our program, we don't have any, it's like exercise is not a requirement of that. And because we want to take stress off the body, gentle movements are fine, going for a walk, yoga, all that's great. But most of the time, people that come to us for weight loss, they're already exercising way too much on top of an already stressed out day. So just adding stress on stress on stress, even though exercise is normally a good thing, sometimes people are overdoing it. And rarely are people not losing weight because they're eating too much and not exercising enough, believe it or not. Most of the people we see, they're the 1 hour cardio queens, we call them, where they're on the treadmill for an hour every day, and then they're eating like a rabbit. And so we get a lot of those types of people, and they're not losing weight because they're just stressing themselves out way too much. A lot
of stress, right?
And so we lack the exercise.
I wanted to, oh shoot, that comment went away, but somebody had commented there about the PCOS, and I think she said insulin resistance or something like that.
Yeah,
so
PCOS, insulin resistance.
That does come up as well, because, you know, we're talking about hormonal regulation, right? When we're talking about balancing the blood sugar, insulin is a hormone, glucagon is a hormone to balance the blood sugar, and then it plays into testosterone and some of the androgen hormones as well. So
yeah, so you get excess abdominal body fat, and then that kind of messes up the way our body processes the sex hormones. And for males, it can decrease the amount of testosterone. There's something called aromatization. So you take testosterone, you turn it into estrogen. And in females, you still have that process. Women produce testosterone as well, just a lot less than males do. But then you also still have that way that our hormones are then metabolized. So there's 3 different types of estrogens. One type is inflammatory, one type is damaging. The other 2 types are more protective and better for us. But we find that a lot of those women, when you run these hormone panels, they're producing way too much of the E4 estrogen type, which is inflammatory, can lead to cancers, and can cause inflammation, cause problems in the body. So if that's happening because of the insulin resistance and the way the hormones are working there, and it's all pushing into that pathway, well, then you're going to have female hormonal problems. And there's still, like, PCOS is a little difficult because there's not really a clear-cut answer on why. Is it the PCOS situation that leads to you be more likely to being insulin resistant, or vice versa? And I did some research on that months ago, and I couldn't really find chicken or the egg. I don't know if there was a clear-cut answer, but in my opinion, we can take care of some of those things. So let's take care of the insulin resistance through a great diet and really pumping our body full of nutrient-dense foods that are better for our blood sugar balancing system, and then see what happens with the PCOS. And a lot of women that have PCOS end up doing better. So chicken or the egg, it doesn't matter. We can't really do much about the PCOS. That might be genetic, it might be whatever, but let's do something about the blood sugar balancing and then see what happens.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it doesn't really matter. I'm not saying diagnoses don't matter, but, you know, if you go to the doctor and, you know, you get labeled with a certain diagnosis, if that patient comes to you and says, you know, I'm diabetic, I have high blood pressure, I have PCOS, I have cancer, whatever, like, you know, you're still going to dig to find those root causes and have just a big, you know, lens to figure out, you know, how are you going to decrease inflammation? How are you going to, you know, balance the blood sugars? Because weight also, you know, the balancing the blood sugars and the weight gain is really underlying for a lot of chronic health issues, including cancers. So.
Yeah. And then that's where it's like, it reminds me of an old saying. I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk, kind of he swears a lot, so be careful if you look him up. But he talks about, in a business sense, doing the right thing is always the right thing. So in business relationships, if you're doing the right thing, you're always doing the right thing. It's never the wrong thing to do, versus maybe screwing someone or treating them unfairly. So I kind of use that same that same saying for the body is doing the right thing is always doing the right thing. So giving the body proper nutrition, taking off any stress that you can, with one of the biggest stresses of modern society being dietary stress of having way too many calories with way too many nutrients. So it's always pumping the gas into the car, which is already full, adding more and more buckets to the outside to take care of this excess energy, and then your body having to do something with it. There's a book I read recently where the author was about metabolic syndrome, and he calls it, it's not obesity is not the problem. It's not excess blood sugar that's a problem. It's not diabetes the problem. He called it energy poisoning. So it's the excess, basically taking in excess energy, or in this case, calories, and then your body having to do something with that leads to all of these other issues that we talked about, high cholesterol. So your body has to carry all this extra fat in the blood. So it has to pump up the cholesterol to carry it. And then depending on what type of cholesterol it is, it can start plaquing the arteries, or blood sugar issues. So diabetes, that's just your body not being able to manage the blood sugar. So then the blood sugar stays high in the blood, and then it has to get rid of it through other means. So you start peeing it out. So it has to go through the kidneys. Then you cause kidney damage. The blood sugar is still high because you're still not taking care of the issue. So now it's damaging the nerve endings. So you start to see diabetic retinopathy, and you start to see neuropathy at the feet and the hands. All the while, all this is causing inflammation in the body because that excess of blood sugar is inflammatory. So now you start basically sandblasting the artery walls, which leads to more plaquing or more damage to those arteries, which could lead to stroke or heart attack. And I mean, you name it, most conditions trace back to this energy deficit or energy excess or energy poisoning that author talked about. So the more complicated things get and the more complex things get, the worse people are, as long as they're stable, of course, and as long as they're being doctored and managed by their doctor, so that we don't lead, like I had a patient that she was doing great, but she had a clogged artery in her heart. Well, she has to be catheterized. So there's nothing we can do about that. Right. She's in imminent danger of a heart attack. So we still need the medical system to take care of those things. But oftentimes I'll say, okay, they're watching your medical conditions, but who's focusing on your health? And that's where, like, I like to say, like, okay, they're watching your medical problems and your diagnoses and your syndromes and your symptoms and all that stuff, but who's really managing your health? So that's where I like to just kind of bring it all back to basics. And because the basics aren't they say common sense isn't very common these days. Same thing with working the basics when it comes to healthcare. We overcomplicate things. We have all these fancy tests, all these medications, all this technology, when you can solve most of this stuff by just what goes in the person's mouth every single day, and what they do every single day, whether it's like walking or something like that, or doing something as simple as journaling or meditation or sitting in a sauna. I mean, so there's so many things that we can be doing for ourselves that are so simple, and most of them are very, very low cost. And but we're missing those.
Or free.
Or free in many cases. But I think, like, especially doctors and patients alike, they overlook them because they think, like, that's just too simple. It can't possibly work. And like we showed with Pat there, it worked. And when everything else failed, he was on 3 medications. They still weren't doing it for his blood sugar levels. His A1C was still up over 8. So back to basics and address the foundations of health. And that's what I think our program really does.
Yeah. The couple things there, you had touched on that. Modern day society, our people are just eating all day long, right? And so our population is overfed but undernourished, right? So we're like eating so much, but we aren't eating nutrient dense foods, like you said. So, that being one of them, but yet we're eating all this food, but yet people are super tired. So if they have these energy stores and they can't tap into it, they're going to be super, super tired. So you talked about a lot of things. And I think a lot of people watching this might be like, okay, yeah, I've heard that before. I know what to do, but I could never do that, right? So if you could start somebody on their journey and give these viewers at least 1 or 2 or maybe a few things that they can start implementing right now to help, what would you start with?
Good question. So I would say, try to commit yourself, and for a lot of people it can be a day at a time, or 3 days at a time, or 5 days at a time. And I know we will often do a 5-pound challenge. I think you have one coming up soon, right? Do you do a 5-day challenge?
I'm doing one right now. Actually, we were just talking about this, like introducing and doing small tips, small habits on a regular basis that really can make like some massive shifts.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm doing one right now.
Okay. So if they're not on that one, they need to jump in now, or if you have one coming up, they need to watch for those if they're your viewers. But we do a 5-pound challenge, which is 5 days every once in a while. But during that, and it doesn't have to be 5 days. Like we had one, she was a teenager and it was so overwhelming to her. And I'm like, just give us 2 good days or 3 good days. So you need to start with where you're at. And depending on how I won't say poor your diet, I'll say how poor your diet is compared to what it should be. I was gonna say different, but how poor it is compared to what it should be, it could be a major change. So yeah. I would just start with one perfect day. Like to tell yourself every Monday, I'm gonna eat all whole foods. I'm not gonna eat any added sugars, nothing packaged, nothing processed. So that could mean getting up in the morning and having a veggie omelet. And these are quick too. Like if you don't really have to know how to cook or be a culinary expert to cook to do these things. So a veggie omelet is cracking 2 eggs in a bowl, mixing it up with some chopped broccoli and onion and tomato and whatever you like, pouring it in the pan and just kind of stirring it like this for 2 minutes on medium until it turns firm. That's your veggie omelet. So have that for breakfast. For lunch, it could be a chicken salad. So there you just get a bunch of lettuce and you chop it up. You can chop up some tomatoes and some peppers, again, whatever you like. And you have maybe some chicken that you grilled up from the night before, cut it up. That's your lunch. For dinner, same thing. Who here can eat filet mignon and a side of broccoli? I could eat it every night, every meal probably. So it can be good foods. You don't have to, like a lot of people say, like, look, I'm a foodie. I couldn't go on a diet. Well, all of these meals you could serve in a fancy restaurant that we use in this program. But again, for dinner, filet mignon, a side of broccoli or asparagus, I think it's a pretty great meal. But what you didn't see in that whole day was you didn't see things like breads or pastas or cereals or cookies, cakes, pies, none of that type of stuff. So try to cut that stuff out. So that's just one day. You may do that for a few weeks, baby steps. The next week, you try to do it for 2 days, try to do it for 3 days until pretty much every day of the week, you're avoiding that stuff. And maybe on the weekend, you have you go out to eat a fancy Italian restaurant, you have your big bowl of pasta. And that's not going to hurt you because the rest of the week you were fine. And then oftentimes that can be even a little daunting and it's hard to do because there's a lot that goes into that. And I always say it's a simple concept, but it's not always easy to practice. So these are simple ideas, simple changes, but because of psychology. So it's cultural. We grew up this way. We have our comfort foods. It's the way mom cooked for us. It's the stuff that we ate in college. We went out to Taco Bell. We went out to McDonald's. When we're constantly bombarded with, speaking of Taco Bell and McDonald's, we're constantly bombarded with all of these commercials and all this marketing, right, which is that they spend millions of dollars to try to get to us, to try to get us to buy their products. What else is in there working against us? So we have our genetics, our cravings. When we were running around the forest looking for food, hunting and gathering, we were meant to crave high calorie, easy to get foods. Because if we didn't eat a lot of those and we didn't crave them, we didn't put on the extra body fat to make it through the cold winter or the time when maybe we didn't come across any animals to hunt down. So you had times of famine. But we're adapted to really crave those high energy, high calorie foods. But now we can get them with every single meal just by walking past the pantry. So we have all this stuff working against us. So it can really be a lot to kind of overcome that. And so that's why we do a 6-week program. It's short enough that we say anyone can do anything for, I think that technically it's 42 days. You can do anything for 42 days. 9 out of 10 people watching this, you can fast, including myself. You can fast for 42 days, water only, and you won't die. You'll make it. It'll suck, but you won't die. So you can certainly eat properly formulated meals for those 42 days and you'll be fine. So it's short enough that it's easy to kind of, okay, I'm just going to commit this amount of time. And it really does fly by once you're in it. But it's long enough that you're going to instill some habits that then will last long term. So I think they say you need to practice something for like 20, 30 days in order for it to become a habit, become easy and less of an effort. So the 42 days is enough that you kind of have to struggle through it the first couple of weeks, get a routine, get good at it. And then it's time to graduate from there onto a maintenance phase, which we also provide that in our program where here's what the 6-week weight loss program was. A little bit restrictive, a little bit strict, but then, all right, we want you to be able to do this long-term. So here's the rest of your life plan. And so that's where I really like our program because it's hard just to say, here's a list of food to follow and foods to eat and then good luck because there's like I talked about, there's so much that goes into it that it's that simple by following these meals and following these habits, but to put them into practice, it's a little bit tougher. Like the first 3 days, food is an addiction. And like any addiction, your brain starts to tell you, I'm dying. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Oh, my sister-in-law, I think she said this was bad for me. And you hear all sorts of excuses. But when you're in the program and you're checking in on a daily basis in our Facebook groups, you're checking in on a weekly basis, one-on-one, or if you're doing group programs, you're having that weekly call once a week. So you get to surround yourself with people going through the same thing, or you're getting to talk to experts like you or I, and it's like, okay, you're on the right path, keep doing it. What are you having trouble with? We'll help you. And that's where the 6-week program really shines. And it's 6 weeks, it's only 6 weeks. You learn a ton, and it's really skills and knowledge that you'll use the rest of your life. And in the beginning, years ago, when I first started this program, when we worked on this program together, I would hesitate to say it's life-changing because I felt like that was overselling it, but I don't think that's even doing it justice. It is life-changing, and we have plenty of people that have changed their lives from this point forward because of the work they did in just those 6 weeks.
Right. Well, and let me just emphasize that, the work they did, right? I mean, you and I are providing, the secret sauce, and we keep on refining this program over the years, but it does take commitment on the participant, right? Like you said, you could do this on your own, start off with, 1 day of clean eating, bump that up to 2. Maybe you can give our viewers another tip too, but you can definitely try lots of things on your own. And I think most people do try a lot of things. And, we've had lots of people go through the program that have really tried everything. So it's just a matter of, like you said, over the 6 weeks, learning better habits, keeping better habits, having the accountability, having the guidance, having the support, because, it's hard. I tell people all the time that, I'm not 100% all of the time. And I need the accountability and the support as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I'm so passionate about it because that's what I did. So we graduated with the same education. Like, we get taught all this stuff in grad school, in chiropractic college, but I was probably the most unhealthiest I've ever been 5 years out of school. Started my own practice. I've always been around like 190 going through undergrad and then into grad school. And then pretty quickly, I found myself up around, I think I topped out to what I weighed myself. I might've weighed more than this at certain points in time, but 238 was the highest I was on the scale. Now I'm back down to about 195 to 200, but it took this program. So if I first did this type of program 6 years ago, it still took me a few years after that to kind of come back to it and offer it to our patients. But I did this program and I followed it to the T, and that's where I lost my first 21 pounds. And I think I did it, I think it was 4 weeks back then, the one I followed. And then that really opened my eyes, like, okay, this is a huge change. Not only did I lose weight, but I feel much better. My energy's through the roof. And that's where I really turned my business around as well. Because I work for myself, and you know how it is. You need to be self-motivated, and you need to get up in the morning and really want to go at them. And I was making it, like I was breaking even and making a few bucks. So I was comfortable, but I wasn't lighting the world on fire. But after I did that, it's like, okay, now I have all this extra energy. And then that's really kind of what jump-started me into the world of functional medicine, because I wanted to help others experience what I experienced. But yeah, it's not easy. It's easier than most people think. I will say that, because we interview and we survey all of our participants, and we ask how difficult it was, or was there anything unexpected. And a lot of people will say it's way easier than I thought it was going to be, but it still doesn't mean it doesn't take any work. So there's still some work involved, but having the support there, and then checking in with the Facebook support group. So the private Facebook support group, checking in with the practitioners. So either you or I or our health coach, Jess. I mean, that's something that you have there for you for those 6 weeks, and even beyond, really, to someone to lean on, because you are going to get a whole lot of conflicting information out there. I've had people go to their doctors, and their doctors look at it and be like, oh, that's pretty low calorie. I don't know if that's good for you. When I just basically got them off their diabetes medications that they've been for 20 years. It's like, look, dude, what did you do for them? Now I do something, and now you're going to say like, oh, I don't know if that's good or not. It's like, well, what do you want them to do? Go back to eating like McDonald's again? So that's a whole different rant. But anyway, so it's just, if anyone is even thinking about this, not even this program, if anyone needs a change, if you want to look better, So let's hand it or let's be honest with each other here. Like, I want to look better in my shirts. Like, I was getting to the point where I'd put certain collared shirts on. I wouldn't wear them because like my belly would kind of stick out a little bit, or they were too slim cut and you can kind of see my love handles, and that sucks. So we say we want to look better. You want to feel better. So the energy, the brain, like getting rid of the brain fog so you can think more clearly. If you want to function better. So if you want to be able to go to the gym and really push it out or go for a walk. We had one woman who's, I think she's probably late 30s. She said she got on her bike and went for like a 20-mile bike ride with her husband. And it's the first time she was on her bike in like 20 years because she just didn't feel good enough to get on it. And so you look, feel, and function better. And all it takes is really those 6 weeks to really show people what it can do. And for a lot of people, that's just the start of their journey. Then after that, it's maintenance phase. And then 3 months down the line, they might want to repeat the cycle again. Because if you have 60 pounds to lose to reach your goals, or 80 pounds, you don't want to stop at 20. And what we don't want people to do is just like, I'm going to lose 20 so I can gain it back over the holidays. It's like, okay, what are your goals? You want to lose 20 pounds or you want to lose 60 pounds? All right, let's set 20 for this phase. On maintenance, you'll probably lose like 5 or 10 more, and then maybe another 20 on a repeat cycle later on down the road. And it's working towards your goals. And by working the program like this, we've seen people lose 60 or 80 or 90 pounds over the course of a year and then keep it off. So it's funny because Jess will laugh. I think my health coach Jess is on. I always used to tell her, I don't want to be a weight loss clinic. I don't want to be a weight loss clinic until I realized, until I found the program like this, where it's not just about the weight loss, it's about those other health benefits. And to be honest, and I'll kind of end my rant here, is that like we do functional medicine. I do functional medicine like you, where we do testing, we do personalized programs and all that other stuff. But this program has worked so well, and it's way cheaper. So instead of someone paying like $3,000 to do all the testing and do the individualized visits and all that other stuff, I mean, they could do this for a fraction of the cost. And most of the people, like, we're starting to use this as a prerequisite to our programs, because if the diet can fix them, they don't have to take all the supplements. They don't have to do all the testing. They don't have to do all the other stuff. And then what we found was that like 9 times out of 10, the people don't even have to go on to do that because they get such great results with just changing their diet. And not just changing their diet, but changing their diet and doing the things they need to do for their body,
their lifestyle.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even though you get amazing results in 6 weeks, it's still not just a quick fix, right? I mean, you have to implement all those habits during those 6 weeks. And sometimes those deep-seated emotional ties are hard, right? So you kind of have to work on that mindset and circle back to, you know, what are these triggers, and how did I build these habits? When did I build these habits, and why is this triggering me, right? So I always say I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but you know, you need to kind of rewrite your story. Your past doesn't define you, and you know, it's so important you need to find why it's so important for what you're doing, and you know, see where it can take you, right? Because if you stay on a certain path that you know you shouldn't be on, you know, maybe you don't want to go down that way, and you want to take a different route. So
yeah, eating food is so emotional. It's such an important part of our life. I mean, back in the day, let's even say before we evolved into human beings, it was basically it's life or death. So food, eating, tastes, all cravings, all that stuff is such a primal response. And when we're at our worst, so when things are stressed, when we don't sleep well, and when we're getting pulled in all different directions, it's just kind of like the default mechanism is to crave a lot of those easy to get calories, or those types of tastes and textures that would normally, in an evolutionary sense, be the difference between life and death. So as evolved primates, if you want to put it that way, or as evolved beings with our big brains, we need to be able to consciously kind of overcome the subconscious and realize, like, okay, I'm having this craving, but it's because I didn't drink enough water this morning. So really, I'm probably dehydrated. Or I'm having this craving because I'm just ticked off at my boss or my manager, and I'm just going to this for comfort, and maybe I don't want to do that. So it's part of that's being, I guess what we consider mindful, or being present. So being present, right. And to me, present is being, Peter Attia has a great way of putting this. He's like, it's that split second between having someone say something and then wanting to punch him in the face, or you screaming an obscenity at him. Because he said he was always the most pissed off person in the world. Like, he had something in his childhood, but being present has given the ability to say, driver, cut me off before you throw the finger up or lay on the horn or swing around them and cut them off yourself. It's like, why does that piss me off so much? What do I care? And then not doing that action. So same thing with food. You have to be present and say, I'm going to the refrigerator at night, right before bedtime. Why? Like, what do I, like, if I lay down and go to sleep, then it's done. Like, do I really need to satisfy that craving? Or can I do something else, like have a hot cup of tea or something like that?
Right. Exactly. All right. So super, super awesome. Great information. And I loved your analogy of the gas tank in the car. If you guys didn't hear that, you got to go back and listen to the beginning where Buddy did that. And we didn't really say, but you were talking about where I live. So just so our listeners know, because I practice in New Jersey and you practice in Pennsylvania. So that's where you're coming from, and you run this program for the residents in Pennsylvania and the residents in your area. Did you want to speak of that at all, or?
Yeah, so I shared this on my personal page, and I've been promoting our program for the past couple of weeks. So if anyone needs to find me, you probably know where I'm already. You probably know where I'm at. If a friend's sharing this with you, you can just click on my profile, and you can see us there, or ask your friend how to find me, and we can get you hooked up with our program. And if you guys are watching, you're Erica's friends, I would definitely jump on this program. I know it's something that I don't see her promoting as much as she should, because it is such a life-changing program. So hopefully we see her out there more sharing this. But really, I mean, I said this before, but if you need a change, then this program will get you there. And I can say that with confidence, because Erica and I do almost the same program. We might structure the visits differently, or the way we administer it, but it's the same basic premise, same food list, and same basic format. And you won't find anything that works better than this, unless you're the type of person that, because like kind of like the bodybuilders that are a little messed up in the head, they can just like measure out 10 servings of chicken and rice and just only eat that every day. But that's not nutrient dense. That's not as healthy either, and it's not sustainable. So, but yeah, this program, I'd recommend this to anyone.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're coming near, I don't think it's going to cut me off. This is my first Facebook Live, so I definitely want to get more information out there to my friends and the people in my community, because it is life-changing. So I thank you for coming on with me today to chat about not just balancing blood sugars, but how balancing blood sugars can do more than just balance your blood sugars, how it can really improve your health and change your life. So thanks again, Buddy. And I hope we'll get you on another time. We'll tell more stories, and I hope you have a great night and continue on helping all of your patients. You're an awesome practitioner. So.
No, thanks for having me on. And we talked about blood sugars, but we didn't get into anti-inflammatory diet. We didn't get into allergy elimination diet component of this program. We didn't get into nutrient density all that much. So we could talk for like 6 or 8 hours on this stuff. And again, that's what the program's for, though. It takes some time to get all the information out and educate people on this. But anyway, I could talk all night. Probably should get home before my wife kills me. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that's it. All right, no problem. Have a great night. Take care.